Hi everyone! Welcome back to Stamp Cat Stamps, where as you can see the Canadian winter is still going on in full force. In part one of this little series we talked about some interesting creative ways to deliver mail when the weather got rough, like barrel mail in the ponchon and also mail delivery by sled dog team. Today's episode will feature a very special guest today, my dad. He's been collecting stamps for years and he's the one who got me interested in stamp collecting. So let's go inside. Hello. So in these albums are my dad's Stamp on Stamps topical collection. And in his Canada Stamp on Stamps, not only does he have the two stamps that I talked about in part one, but he's also gone the extra mile to try and collect all of the postal items that are shown on the stamps, as well as the souvenir sheet and the official first day cover. So let's take a look at his incredible album and hear more about it. So Dad, can you tell us a little bit more about your topical interests? What are Stamp on Stamps and why do you like to collect them?
Okay, yes, certainly. Stamp on Stamp is a stamp where part of the picture is showing another stamp, oftentimes an old classic, usually a stamp that's very pretty and popular with collectors. Probably most of you have stamps on stamps in your collection already. You may or may not have given particular attention to them. This would be an example of one that marks the first stamps of British Columbia and Vancouver Island. Anybody who has a Canadian collection of any competence at all would probably have this particular stamp. It's from, I believe, around 1960 or so. Also from Canada, this one commemorates Canada's first stamp.
Oh, the beaver one!
Yes. Why I collect stamps on stamps, it's because it's a topical collection, but it has incredible breadth to it because you're collecting the stamps themselves that show other stamps. So within your topical collection you can encompass all of philately, including every topic that other topical collectors would collect. I'm just looking for some examples here. This one here is a space topical. Most of you would probably recognize this one too. It's from Hungary and commemorating a postal conference of the, in that case, the Communist Bloc aligned nations. Here there are 12 stamps to the set, each from a different country, and so it was fun to collect the stamps that were shown. Most of them are inexpensive and easy to get, so in my youth I liked stamps like this. I still do because they're inexpensive. There was one problem holdout. I was gonna say, yeah, if you didn't talk about it, there's a special story about this. There at the very bottom in the middle is a North Korean stamp. In the olden days, the United States pretty well had a stranglehold on collections in North America in terms of what was available and what wasn't, and North Korea was on their blacklist, and so you just couldn't get any North Korean stamps. So for many, many years, this spot at the bottom, it went unfilled. But that's changed over the decades, and now North Korean stamps are available through European dealers. Lisa was able to track down this stamp for me and purchase it for me, and so that completes the collection, and I'm very grateful to Lisa for helping me with that. I remember that was when I first got into collecting from you, and I remember you saying like, oh, the stamp's from North Korea, I don't know if I'll ever get that one, like to fill that in my collection. But when you first started collecting, how old were you approximately? Like a kid, right? Yes. Yeah, my brother and I both collected together and we were kids. We must have started, I guess, when we were 9 or 10. 9 or 10. And back then, like, you didn't have the internet, right? So you would just have to go buy from, like, stores or stamp clubs, swaps, or like, mail swaps with each other. But I remember I took note of that when I got interested in collecting in 2021.
and then just went online and searched for it and bought it from like a stamp dealer online. I bought it from Postfield before I knew that there were better deals out there, and I think I paid like quite a bit for the shipping, much more than the actual one stamp by itself. But at least you're able to fill it.
Yeah, and that's okay. Sometimes if a stamp is very scarce, you'll pay way more for it than it's worth, simply because you're not likely to ever find it again, and you either pay a lot for it or you do without it.
What do you have here?
Yeah, here would be another example of one of the early pages that was made up soon after starting the specialty collection. And this is from Italy, and I'm showing this one because it shows a collage, and sometimes you'll get a stamp on stamp that shows several stamps in a cluster or collage, and then it's a lot of fun to try and collect the stamps that are shown and remake the collage in full-size form.
That's kind of similar to the stamps that we're going to talk about today, but in this case the collage is more with the postal covers and postal stationery as opposed to the stamps themselves. Did you have anything else that you're going to show too?
This is one other stamp on stamp that I acquired very early on when I was collecting as a kid, and in those days you could send away for packages of 100 different stamps for 10 cents. But of course we didn't have much money when we were kids, so we happily invested in deals like that. And oftentimes one of the stamps, or some of the stamps you would get, would be this Hungary postage due. And believe it or not, these are stamps on stamps. The stamp that they show, I've got them on the next page, an older set of postage dues. At the time, I didn't even notice that those were stamps on stamps. It was only many years later when I started reading up about the hobby that I was clued out that they were, and so they made it into the specialty collection.
This page is so cool.
This one here is from Mali, from the 1970s. In the 1970s, they made a lot of very beautiful stamps on stamps, which I think helped to sort of hook me on the topical specialty. At the same time, there were comic strips in the newspaper that had the same motif as the stamp that's shown on the Mali stamp on stamp, and so I made a background from the comic strips and put some of the Mali stamps on display.
The bird standing on top of the turtle's back. That's kind of uncanny, like crazy that it was the same image on like a comic strip.
Yes, that's part of the hobby, is you're constantly on the alert for stuff like that, things that you can do to make your album look interesting. Mm-hmm. This is a recent page. It's not one from my childhood, but it's worth seeing. Djibouti souvenir sheet of questionable postal validity, but it was one that Lisa and I fought over because it shows both Pokemons, which is her specialty, and stamps on stamps, which is my specialty.
Little Pikachu in the corner.
Yeah, so this one obviously cartoons on stamps, and so it's another example of the topical breadth of the hobby.
Excellent. Well, thank you for showing us some highlights from your collection that you've been building over the years. So let's shift focus to these two stamps about the unique methods of mail delivery in Canada. Can you kind of, like, as an overview, walk us through your pages and the way that you've displayed them here?
Okay, on the first page we have a complete sheet as issued by the Canadian Post Office. It consists of 16 stamps total, and there's two different types. You have to have the pair to really see the entire picture. The one on the left features Magdalen Island's barrel post, and then the one on the right features Northern dog sled post. Two of the more unusual postage stamp delivery methods that were in use in Canada in the early 1900s. The border on this one shows 3 Queen Victoria stamps. These were just the workhorse stamps of the day, the 2 cent. Again, most people probably have these in their Canada collection. but I guess that's appropriate. They didn't want to show anything that was super rare here. They wanted to show the everyday mail that was affected by these novel methods of mail delivery.
Is that also what's shown in these covers in the center? Is that all like kind of everyday mail that you'd send?
Typically, and fortunately, yes, they're everyday type stamps. They're not the super rare ones. They're ones that would realistically have been used for, I guess, giving the denominations to the letters that were in effect at the time, or given the postal rate.
All right, so what have you got shown on the second page here?
Okay, the second page is dedicated to dog sled mail. It has 3 covers on it. One of them is an American postcard, and then the other 2 are again Canadian stamps. These aren't the actual letters that went through dog sled mail. They're similar looking covers in that they have the same stamps on them as the ones that are featured on the Canadian 2011 stamp. The United States one is sort of interesting. When I purchased that, it had a message on the back of it, which was kind of cute. I can read it. It says, "Dear Maddie, I was going to write you a letter, but time is short. Your ma is awful mad, and I asked her what I should write for her, and she said nothing. Her father will see to her, and I couldn't get any more out of her. She said you would come home this week, and Grandma says you had better come right away and save trouble. I have been pressing leaves. Ask Aunt Kate if they need to be varnished with rosin too to put into the wreath. Tear this up. Yours in a hurry, Josh. Right if you don't come." Josh sounds like a really neat guy. He sounds like Tom Sawyer.
Sounds like whoever he's writing to is in trouble. Yeah, I love getting that glimpse, wondering about these people's lives, or wondering like, uh-oh, I wonder what that was about, or whatever happened to Maddie.
Oh, we could possibly even find out. It's
Maddie Livingston,
who lived in Marathon, New York State in around the 1880s or so. Could probably track it down. In fact, now you've piqued my curiosity. Okay, we'll turn the page. It's a first day cover of the pair of stamps. It has an interesting cachet on it that also shows a few of the old stamps that were in use at the time, although not the ones that are pictured on the stamp-on stamp. Nevertheless, I collected those because they were fairly easy to acquire and an interesting addition. The interesting part of this one is that it has an old Canadian postal card, and I had purchased that postal card at a stamp show many, many years ago when I was just a kid, and it had hung around my album sort of loose without really having a home, and I figured out it never would. It's always just going to be lying around the album. And then by the sheer luck of circumstances, it happened to be the style of postcard that was pictured on the cachet.
Wow.
So now it has a place of honor in my stamp-on stamp album, and it's a lovely addition, a period piece.
That's crazy. When you saw the cachet, did you recognize it right away? Like you're like, oh, I've got an envelope just sitting that has that. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. And then what is, here you have something else written behind. Is that some, also what was written on the back of this card too?
Again, I've written what was written on the back. This one's less interesting. It says, "Dear Sir, your 2 crates of berries sold this PM for 7.5 cents a box. Had you sent them yesterday instead, they would have sold for 8.5 to 9 cents.
Okay.
Signed, Joanne." And it's dated Ottawa, July 3rd, 1897.
Like, why tell me that?
Now, because of the date, July 3rd, it would have been very near to the Canada Day holiday, and possibly aligning with the weekend when people would have been having get-togethers and large picnics and needing berries for their desserts. And so that's probably why the price fluctuation happened that way. But you're right, it's sort of annoying.
I know.
You could have gotten a better
By the
price.
way, you could have sold it for more.
The other day.
Like, just don't even tell me.
Well, live and learn. Right?
Yeah.
And next
time,
July
send
long
it
weekend, he's
before
going
the
to have
long
those.
weekend.
He's going to have those berries ready a day early.
Final page.
This comes to the third page, which again is a display of covers, and this one here would be on the barrel post. And unfortunately, none of them again are from the island of, or the Magdalen Islands, which the original ones on the stamp on stamp would be from, but they're replicas that sort of show some of the same stamps. Now, the most interesting one in this case is the one at the very bottom. It's got a Hudson Bay Company cachet that was being used on all their stationery, at least as late as the 1930s, which is when this cover is dated at. And this one I found on the eBay pick-click site just by looking and looking and looking for Hudson Bay Company type postal covers, and luckily this one was available, and I was able to purchase it. And that's also one of the beauties of collecting stamps on stamps, is that not that many people do it, and so there's not sort of intense competition for the items that come up. In this case, nobody was particularly interested, or not many people were particularly interested in this cover, and so there was one available for me when I went looking for it.
I was going to ask, do you remember which item from these pages cost the most? Or was there one that was hard to get, or were they all relatively simple to find?
I think that the complete sheet was probably the most expensive, and it was
really like the souvenir sheet, or
the souvenir sheet, because you're looking at 16 stamps at 60 cents each, so it had a face value of $10, and I think I paid close to $20 Canadian for it, which is still not
that's not bad,
that much money.
So all these covers were less than 10.
Yeah, all of
wow.
Well, this one here, the Hudson's Bay Company, I think might have been around 14 or something like that, between $10 and $15. Again,
not breaking your bank, eh?
Yeah,
That's good.
not that bad, which is good. So it was an interesting exercise to put all of this together, and produces a really nice display and a good conversation piece.
I love these pages quite a bit. I love like the way that you've displayed it with all of the postal stationery, and also even trying to kind of match the angles or show the way that it's oriented on the original stamp. This has always been one of my favorite pages from your albums. Your Stamp on Stamp Canada collection is stamps issued by Canada that are stamps on stamps, as well as from other countries that show a Canadian stamp. Approximately how many stamps do you have in these albums, do you know? The stamp on stamps specifically.
It's probably, in total stamps would probably be a little over 100 in both albums. The total number of stamps on stamps, I think, is in the 80s.
Issued by Canada?
Yes, yeah, which is incredible. To put it into perspective, I think when my brother and I were kids, there were maybe a total of 14 stamp on stamp type items. If you had told me as a kid that when I was growing up that I would be able to fill 2 full albums with stamps on stamps of Canada, I simply would have laughed at you. I never would have thought that it would come to pass in my lifetime.
Come a long way since then. Well, thank you so much, Dad, for sharing with us some of the pages from your Stamp on Stamps album. The way that you've kind of collected everything and displayed it all together really brings a lot more of the history of the stamps to life.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to show off my Stamp on Stamp collection and talk about it, and hopefully I've gotten a few of you out there interested in collecting stamps on stamps. It's definitely a very enjoyable topical specialty.
For sure. I am hoping to do more episodes like this in the future, interviewing you and kind of showing highlights from your collection as well, because I think you've got some really great stuff that you put together. And just as we were wrapping up, my camera stopped recording. We had filled up the memory card, which is pretty lucky because we had just finished. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know in the comments if you collect postal history or have any special ways of displaying your stamp collection. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe and stay curious. Bye for now.